Welcome to your week 5 video. We're looking at unit 4 now, and we're going to start going into some actual coding concepts. So this one's going to go through variables. This video is basically a condensed version of about 3 or 4 lectures that I would give if you were in person. So it might go a little quick. It's probably going to be a little bit longer. You might need to watch it 1 or 2 times. But this is kind of the best way that I have to give you this content. So let's start looking at what a variable is and how to use them. So first things first, when we're talking about variables, we're really talking about a value that we are going to assign to a placeholder, right? This placeholder is like a way for us to store that value. When we're dealing specifically with the values, there's 2 types of values that we can deal with in JavaScript. One is a number. The other one is a string. So in regards to creating variables and using variables, they basically work the same way. You just need to know that when we're dealing with numbers, you just use the number. When we're dealing with strings, just like in Unit 3, you always have to put quotes around your strings. So they start off in code.org by teaching this using post-it notes. So anytime you see a yellow post-it note, that's representing a value that's a number. Anytime you see a pink post-it note, that's a value that's a string. And you'll notice strings can have spaces, they can have letters, they can also be numbers, which gets kind of confusing, but we'll get into that. So we have operators, right? This is just like math. So in this case, I have 2 values. One's a 2, one's a 3. So I'm saying 2 plus 3. This plus is my operator, right? The entire 2 plus 3, that's my expression. So in coding, dealing with these operators and these expressions, I would say 2 plus 3 evaluates to 5, right? Same thing, 5 minus 1. This is my expression. The minus sign is my operator. I would say 5 minus 1 evaluates to 4. So these are kind of some examples, right? These first 4 are pretty straightforward because these are using normal operators. But when we get down here, you're going to notice that it looks a little different because we're essentially taking not a number but a string, which is the word FOR, and we're trying to add the word ever, EVER. And this is why knowing whether something's a number or a string is important as we start looking at variables. This is an expression. This is my operator. But you'll notice that for plus ever, we can evaluate this in coding. It's going to bring the 2 strings together and evaluate to a single word forever. This one, I have a string plus the number 8. So here's my expression, here's my operator. I would say the string gr plus 8 evaluates to, and notice what it does. Right? It creates a string gr8. So even though I had a string and a number, and I'm doing, addition on it essentially, it is going to bring those 2 together and create one string of everything that I've evaluated. And this is a really important concept in coding. We're going to bring this up a few times probably in this video and during your other video this week. When we're bringing strings together, we don't call this addition, we call it concatenation. So if you hear me say concatenate the string, or the string needs to be concatenated, what I'm saying is you're going to add 2 strings together and it's going to evaluate to whatever those 2 strings are. All right, so like if we look over here on the right, we have tree, which is a string, plus house. That will concatenate to tree house, right? U plus R, that will concatenate to your, Y-O-U-R. So again, just kind of, you have access to these slides on Canvas. You might want to go through this again. But this is just the idea of operators, expressions. They evaluate to something, and what happens when we have strings and numbers working together, or 2 strings. How is that evaluated? This is how it works in coding. And it's just kind of something that you have to get used to. All right, so like over here on the right, we know 4 plus 5 is 9, 10 minus 9 is 1, tree plus house is tree house, YOU plus R is your, 3D, this is going to, even though we have a number and a string, it's going to evaluate to a single string that's completely surrounded by quotes. That's 3D. All right, so what they do when they teach this is they use this idea of Ziploc baggies and Post-it notes. So we are now kind of getting into what a variable is, right? A variable is just a container that we can use to store values. And it gives us the ability to pass that container around in our code and have access to that value. Again, this is a very abstract thing. It's a lot easier to show you in person. So when you do your weekly check-in, if you're struggling with this, let me know. It's going to be one of the questions I ask you this week at your check-in, so I can make sure that you're really understanding this idea of a variable being a container that gets assigned a value. So when we're looking at the Ziplocs, we're talking about the variable or the container that can store the value for us. So if you look at this one on the left, it's the Ziploc has the word zip on it. The value is the Post-it note inside with 2. All right, so zip is my variable. The value of zip is 2. Over here, I have a Ziploc. The name of my Ziploc or the name of my variable is whoop. The value of whoop is the string hi. Okay? So we're going to kind of take this concept, eventually work it into our code, but for now you just kind of need to think in this abstract way that we have these containers and those containers can have a value, right? I cannot put 2 Ziplocs inside this, 2 Post-it notes inside this container. I couldn't say the value of zip is 2 and hi, right? Each Ziploc or each variable can only get 1 Post-it note or 1 value assigned to it. So you can see how we kind of tie in the idea of operators and expressions using this variable. Because what this is saying is I have the number 3 on a Post-it note and I want to add zip, right? Which on the surface doesn't make any sense, but remember, zip is a container. It's our variable that has a value. The value of zip is 5, all right? Because I've defined it over here and I put my little 5 Post-it note inside my Ziploc. So when I'm saying 3 plus zip, what the code actually means is 3 plus 5. It knows that the value of zip is 5. So 3 plus 5 will evaluate to 8. All right, over here I have boop plus zip. So there's a Ziploc or a variable named boop. The value of that is hi. And then I know that zip has a value of 5. So the way the code will interpret this variable boop plus the variable zip will evaluate to hi plus 5. Again, a string and a number. It's going to concatenate this and make it one string that says hi 5, just like this. All right, so we have some more practice here. Now we have the variable boo, which has a value of 4, and we have the variable rar, which has the string value b. So if I say 3 times boo, right, if you think about it, boo is a variable. We know the value's 4, so 3 times boo is really saying 3 times 4. All right, 3 times 4 is 12. This one is r plus the string EP, right? I know that the value of rar is b, so this is like saying the string be plus the string EP. Again, we can't add strings, but we can concatenate them. So be plus EP equals the string beep. Here we have rar plus boo. So this will evaluate to 4 plus the string be. So I have a number and a string. It's not going to add, it's going to concatenate to be B4. Right? Okay, so we're going to kind of move on from color coding our post-it notes. We're just going to, the strings aren't going to be pink anymore. The numbers aren't going to be yellow. We're just going to kind of start looking at the code and seeing how this works. So up till now, I've been using this Ziploc idea of a Ziploc being a variable. This is the name that we're giving that variable. If I wanted to write this in code, right, because I don't have Ziplocs in code, I need to actually write something. What I do is I would write this command var space and then the name of the variable that I want. Right, var it's a command in JavaScript. The second your JavaScript sees this var with a space, it knows that that line of code you are intending to create a new variable. You're creating a new container that will eventually store a value to it. So this line, var space POW, would create a container or a variable called POW that you could now use to store values. That is the coding way to kind of create this virtual Ziploc that we've been using as a visual representation of what our variable looks like. So if I was going to assign a value to POW, so I have my first line, I use the var keyword telling the code I'm going to create a variable, and then I give my variable a name. All right, and the names are important. Just like when we were dealing with the IDs for the elements in our design mode, the name of our variable should be descriptive and the name of our variable should use camel case. So in this case, it's one word, it's all lowercase. So I have written var space POW. That tells the computer, create a variable, call it POW. What I can do now is use this POW in my code. So I could say POW, this means equals 3. Right? Now this is an important note here because I said equals, but you're seeing a left arrow. The way the College Board works, they don't use equal signs when they're talking about this. They use the left arrow. But if you were to actually write this in code.org, you do not use the left arrow, you use the equal sign. So it's kind of confusing. This is called pseudocode. You're going to see more and more of this as we go. Just know that this left arrow means equals. It's an equal sign. So what this line is doing is saying, okay, I've created this variable called POW. I now want to assign POW a value. I want to put a post-it note inside my container that I've created. And that post-it note is going to be the number 3. Right? I can also change the value that's stored in there. So even though I can't have 2 values, I could say, you know what, I don't want POW to have the value 3 anymore. I want POW to have the value 5. So we're going to walk through this code one more time. So I create my variable using the keyword var, and then I give my variable a name. Right? That creates my little Ziploc baggie, my virtual container that I can store a value in. This line is where I'm going to assign a value to POW. So I'm saying POW now has the value 3. So I put my little 3 post-it note inside my container. Here I'm saying, you know what, I want to change the value that I have assigned to my POW variable. So what's important to know is that when you do this, this 3 that it was originally assigned gets thrown in the trash. It is gone forever. There's no way to get it back. And it replaces the value inside of your container with the new 5 that you wanted it to have. So at this point, POW now has a value of 5. All right, so we can change our values. Just know that once you change it, the old value is thrown away. You don't get it back. There's no way to figure out what it was. It's not super important this early in the class, but this does become more important as we start moving forward. So what they want us to do is kind of run this program and see what happens. So first I'm creating a variable called pizza. I am assigning pizza the value 3. right? So originally this pizza would have had a 3 in it. I'm then creating a second variable called tacos, because I can create as many variables as I need in my code. What I'm saying here is change the value of pizza. So pizza should now be equal to yum. So the 3 got thrown out and yum was assigned as the value for the variable pizza. And then I'm assigning tacos the string the best. So now you can see pizza is yum and tacos is the best. Again, we're just kind of working through this multiple times, hoping it kind of sticks. So here we have, evaluate the expression first to get the one value, assign the value as normal. So we are starting off by creating a variable called POW. We have not assigned it any value, so it's just empty. I'm then saying POW equals 1 plus 2. All right, so what will happen here is this expression will first be evaluated. So 1 plus 2 is 3. 3 is assigned as the value to POW. All right. I am then saying, hey, I want to change the value I have for POW, and I want it to be equal to the expression 3 plus 4. So our code will evaluate 3 plus 4, which is 7, and it will assign 7 to this variable POW, which is what you're seeing here. So again, we're starting with a blank variable, no value. We're assigning it the value 3. We're updating that so that POW is now 7, which means the 3 got thrown away. All right, so here's some others. I'm not going to go through this one too slowly. I'm just going to say, we're creating a variable called ZOW. We're also creating a variable called fly. I want to set fly equal to TO plus DAY, so it's going to concatenate this. So fly is equal to today. ZOW is equal to 4 minus 1. It's going to evaluate first to 3. 3 is assigned to ZOW, so fly is currently equal to today. ZOW is equal to 3. I want to update fly to be equal to 3 times 3. So 3 times 3 is 9, so 9 is now the value of fly. And ZOW is equal to 4 plus now. This will concatenate. When it gets evaluated, we'll have a string for now, and that is my value for ZOW, which is what you kind of see over here. All right, so again, you can run through these slides on your own. I suggest you do that, kind of go back through these, and where it's saying run the program, run through this in your head, see if you get to the same answer as they're getting, right? Make sure you kind of understand how we create variables, how we assign values to variables, how we concatenate strings with strings and numbers or two strings, and kind of how this flows, right? Some of your questions on your multiple choice are going to have something like this, where I'm going to ask you, what is the value of ZOW after line 5 runs? So you need to kind of know that you create it, you've assigned it something here, but that got thrown out when you reassigned it on line 5. Again, here is some more for you to run through. All right, this one you should get fuzz 11, and clip should have a value of GR8. Great. But kind of run through that on your own. Sometimes it helps to get a piece of paper out and actually write the variable names, and kind of, we call it step tracing. So you should write fuzz on your paper, clip on your paper. Next to fuzz, say fuzz equals 5, and then when fuzz gets reassigned, cross out the 5, say, write what it is now. Kind of, as you go through each step, trace what the value of each of these variables is, seeing if you can get to this. This is just kind of reiterating what I was saying earlier about the pseudocode. Just know that in some languages, including JavaScript, the assignment operator is not written. We use this left arrow, right? So the left arrow is written as equal sign in our actual code. In the pseudocode, we use the left arrow. So basically, these mean the same thing. Right? This is how we write it in code.org. This is how they're going to write it on the College Board website and on some of your code.org assignments. Just know, it means the same thing. The left arrow is the equal sign. This is confusing. I don't like that they do this, but they do. All right. There are some additional things that you're going to learn through this unit. So this is the part you might want to refer back to as you're working on some of the lessons. One thing that we have in this class is patterns, right? I am going to put a document on Canvas as we go through and learn different patterns for you to reference. But these patterns help us do things, right? There's kind of simple algorithms that have already been written for us to complete a task. So this particular pattern is called the counter pattern. I'm going to bring this back up when you're going through some of your lessons, but I'm just going to talk through it really quick. Basically what we're doing is trying to count how many times this event happens, right? If you remember from Unit 3, there's some sort of button on our page whose ID property is ID, and anytime it's clicked, this code is going to run. Right? So what this code is doing is before the on event is ever clicked, so when our app initially runs, I'm creating a variable called myVar and I'm setting it equal to 0. So anytime the button's clicked, I want to update myVar and add 1 to it. I'm essentially trying to count how many times this button gets clicked. So the way this works, myVar has a value of 0. So when this button is first clicked, myVar is going to be set equal to whatever the current value of myVar is plus 1. So in this case, myVar is 0, so 0 plus 1, it gets evaluated. It's going to evaluate to 1. 1 is going to become the value of myVar. Right? So even though it started at 0, once this button's clicked one time, myVar, I reassigned it, the 0 was thrown in the trash, and now myVar has a value of 1. So if I click the button a second time, again, this event happens, so this code is going to run. It's going to say, okay, myVar is now equal to whatever myVar's current value is, plus 1 more. So this is the second click. The value of myVar currently is 1, so now this says 1 plus 1. So it's going to evaluate 1 plus 1 to 2, and then store that as myVar. And you can kind of see every time I click it, it's going to add 1 to the value that's stored in myVar. If I were to print out the value of myVar down here, this would always tell me how many times that button's been clicked. We call this the counter pattern. You're going to practice this a bunch in this class. You'll refer back to this slide a few times. Just kind of keep this in your mind as we go into the lesson in the next video. This is going into concatenation, which I kind of went into at the start of this video. It's just this idea that we can add strings, but when we add strings, we call it concatenation. Sorry about that. So my string currently has a value of rock. My other string has a value of roll. So if I concatenate all 3 of these together, because these are 3 strings that I'm trying to concatenate, my story would be equal to rock and roll. So I would get a single string that said rock and roll. That's just another example of concatenation. We're also going to go into debugging a little bit during this unit. This isn't super important, just make sure that you know these 4 steps. You first want to be able to describe the problem. Whenever you have a bug, the first thing you need to do is describe what the bug is. What did you expect it to do? What does it actually do? And does it always happen? Once you can describe the problem, they next want you to hunt for the bugs. So look to see if there's any warnings. What did you change most recently? Maybe that created the bug. Try to explain your code to someone else, see if you can find your error in there, or look for code related to the problem. All right. The idea here is you're going to be describing the problem, you're going to hunt and find the problem. Once you know what the problem is, you should try some different solutions. So make small changes, rerun your program, see if it fixes it. And then once you're done, your last step is, because at this point you described the problem, you looked for it and found it, and you fixed it, you should be able to document how you fixed it. So we're not going to actually do all 4 of these steps. There's nothing on the College Board exam that requires you to do all 4 of these steps, but they do want you to know the 4 steps. Like they could ask you in the debugging process, what is the third step? You should know that that is the try step where you're looking for solutions. Also know that, as we kind of went over this before, but maybe you have some code over here and you're running it, things aren't working right. These console logs, especially when you're working with variables, are extremely helpful in that you can add some console logs, and instead of putting a string in here, you could actually put, like this line 14, console log out my favorite food. Right, because what that's going to do is it will actually console log out what the value of my favorite food is at this line. So sometimes there's some code where you create a variable, you assign it a value, then you change the value, and you need to get the final value of that variable. Right, but somewhere along the way it's not working. Maybe on that final step where you're supposed to be using the final value for this variable, you see that it's using an old value, right? The reassignment's not working or something. You can add these console logs in to kind of check your code along the way. It will log out down here what those values are, so you can kind of see where the issue is happening, right? It's part of that debug process where we're searching for the bug, right? We're using these console logs to log out the value of variables as our code runs so we can see where the issue is happening. You're going to practice this a little bit this week, so this will make more sense when you get to the code.org lessons. The only other thing I will say about variables, and this is extremely important, this happens all the time. Even 4 months into this class, I see students doing this. We typically want to create our variables outside of any function or on event, right? We haven't gotten into functions yet, but specifically for the on events. If you look at this code over here, I have this variable clicks. I actually defined the variable, meaning I created it using that var command outside of the on event, right? This creates what we call a global variable. So this clicks exists anywhere in our code, including inside of this on event. You do not want to do it this way. You can see here, the difference is this var clicks was moved inside of the on event. This creates what we call a local variable. All right, this variable is only going to exist, we can only use it inside of this on event. So if I tried to log out clicks outside of the on event, I would get an error saying that clicks doesn't exist. Right? So if you're getting errors in your code and it says this variable doesn't exist, what I want you to do is look and see if you accidentally created the variable inside of an on event. That is 9 times out of 10 going to be the solution to that bug. Right? So again, we just want to avoid local variables, especially when we're debugging. So make sure you're creating your variable outside the on event. Right here, they're creating a second variable with the same name inside the on event. This is going to give you a problem, right? This var should not be here, right? It should just say count equals count plus 1. We don't want this var inside here. All right, and again, kind of those last 3 or 4 things that I said, you'll probably want to watch the next video, start working through the lessons, and then when you start having issues, you might want to rewatch the end of this video to kind of go over some of this stuff. All right, so that is pretty much variables. Again, that is about a week and a half of lectures in a short period of time in a video. So watch this a few times if you need to. During your check-ins, I'm specifically going to be asking you this week about variables to kind of assess how well you're understanding these. So this week's check-in might be a little bit longer than the other ones because I might have to stop and kind of clarify some things for you based on the questions I ask and what you guys are answering. All right, good luck. See you in the next video. Thanks.